Oh yeah, this as a kid growing up, I this is probably the game I played the most but advanced the least in. This was one I picked up without really knowing anything about it. I mean, there's three big toads, side-scrolling, beat 'em up from from what I saw of the first level and what I saw of pictures. And I was I think it appealed obviously to the kid that was a Ninja Turtles fan, because with that first Ninja Turtles game, they didn't really get a good shake. So this kind of felt like it would be a good alternative, and that's kind of when I was a kid why I picked this up. And boy, my parents never whooped me when I was a kid, but this game sure as shit did every night. Um, but I mean, it's a game I remember for just being extremely difficult. I remember not really enjoying it, and it's billed as a co-op. This is a two-player game, but as we'll talk as we go along, I don't know if two players is the best route to take.
I actually still quite fond of Battletoads, and I was back in the day when I rented it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, obviously it's taking a lot from Ninja Turtles, and I was a very big Ninja Turtles fan back then. So I was like, well, I mean, these are toads and they're green. So this game should be just as good as the Turtles game, and it kind of, if you looked on the back of the box, it looked like it was kind of trying to be the same game, kind of a beat 'em up style. And it does for a minute, but it decides to be several other kind of games as well. But also, you spoke of this was something you didn't get very far in, no matter how many times you played it. And like I was always a big fan of Contra. Contra was one of the very first games I ever bought. And that was one of those games I could sit down, and as hard as that game is, I could always advance a little bit more, even like Castlevania. But I'm like you, when I was a kid, I did not advance any further in Battletoads ever. No matter how many times I played this game, I don't think I ever got past like the third stage. And I think that was true for most people that played Battletoads back then. But yeah, this was I still think it's a fun game, but it's just one of those you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, I never owned Battletoads. I definitely had played it previously. It was definitely pushing Nintendo power, and it's entirely supposed to appeal to people who love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Turtles game came out for the Nintendo, the bad one, in 1989. The arcade game came out in 1990, and that was a much better game. I think a very easy game, but a very, very fun game that was just a regular brawler. So this came out in 1991. It looked more like an extreme action title than the second Turtles game, but at the same time, it looked awesome. If you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that live in the sewer, you're going to love these space frogs. It's incredible. And it did. It looked super fun. It was two players at the same time, and the first level does look just like the second, not just like the second Ninja Turtles game, but a very similar style. It's a brawler. You can walk in and out of the screen a little bit. You're punching people, but then as you're hitting them, your hands or foot gets way bigger, and like it's much more cartoony and awesome looking. You're like, oh, this is going to be the best fun ever. And it's very deceptive because that game changes pretty much level to level. I don't know if I could say there's any 2 or 3 levels that are the same in this. I mean, it really is a bunch of different, not styles of games, but after the first level, the game kind of shows you what it's going to do. And we'll get into that a little more. This game was developed by Rare. We've already talked about Rare several times in the podcast, but Rare makes good games. This may have been one of the first that I remember playing by Rare. I'm sure it's not their first, but it was an early Rare game. Put out in the U.S. by Tradewest, who the only other thing I had from Tradewest was the original Double Dragon. Oh. If you like the brawlers, that's what this looked like, especially when you see it in Nintendo Power. The first level they show you, most of the shots in the back of the box are pretty much that first level or two. And yeah, it said it was 2 players, and thankfully, my only memory of 2 players was trying to play once or twice with my brother, getting mad just that he's not very good, and playing by myself. I think if I would have gotten farther than the first couple levels with 2 players, it would have been cause to draw blood.
I don't think you can play this game with 2 players. I mean, beyond the first level. You just have, if you want to beat this game, you have to play by yourself.
Yeah,
because
you can really fuck each other up on here,
and just not even trying to. It's just the way the game is, and how it controls and the way you attack and things like that. You are going to fuck each other up.
Yeah,
and especially even, in that second stage, which isn't too hard. It's just if you're playing with somebody else, and I had this when I was a kid with my cousin. I don't think there's another game that you play with 2 players where you just want to violently hurt the other person that's playing.
It's an odd thing where a game like this, where you usually benefit from a second player, it's already a hard enough game, but it is a near impossible game with 2 players, and that's such an odd thing for this genre. Usually a beat 'em up, you get that second player in Final Fight, and you're good to go. Streets of Rage, you get 2 people. I mean, that's a big advantage. On this one, you're not going to want to. You're not going to have a good time. And I can only base this off my cousin and I playing. We were determined in our younger days that we were going to advance through this thing. We made it. We were lucky to make it off stage 2, which I think is one of the worst co-op experiences you could possibly ever have. And 3 was a no-go at all. But yeah, it's just such an odd thing when you see this type of game. I think a side-scrolling beat 'em up is synonymous with 2 players.
And it was just so disappointing because back then, especially on the NES, like 2-player co-op was a big deal. Like that was a great feature.
Yeah, and to be, we've all 3 said it, to be very heavily influenced by that TMNT arcade game, which once again was 4 players at the arcade and 2 at home. And just made it such a much more enjoyable experience. And when you sit down with 2 people on here, you're going to be at each other's throats before it's over with.
Well, it's not just that you can hurt each other, which is always a pain. I mean, Double Dragon did it, but the game was, the playing area was big enough. You could avoid each other if you needed to. This, though, especially after the first level is kind of doable because, again, it is a standard kind of brawler style level. You start on the left side of the level, you walk through some sections of what looks like a planet, and you're fighting these pig monster things. Standard brawler, no big deal, you're good to go. Then you get to the end of that first level, and it's like it switches to a first person view from the point of the boss, which I thought was super cool. And even with 2 players on that, you're like, okay, this is okay, and a neat boss fight. And yes, and you hit the second level. Second level, you're descending down a hole on a rope, and you're just kind of swinging around the level trying to hit these birds that are trying to cut your rope, which will instantly kill you. And that means you have to swing around back and forth, and most likely into each other, which will also do damage and knock you off the rope and kill you. I can't imagine the later levels of this game. Even the third level with 2 players seems like, even if you're not hurting yourself, because I think the bikes you would be fine on, but it's so busy that with 2 people, how could you even keep track of what's happening?
Yeah, the first level is it's the only one where you can kind of divide and conquer the screen. There's enough room where, I'll take this side, you take that side, and just kind of take the enemies as they come to you. The second is when you're descending, it's such tight quarters, and it's a lot more disorienting, kind of picking who's going up and down rather than left to right. And yeah, a lot of times when you're making that transition from one side to the other, I don't know if it's just the 2 of us that were playing. I don't know I'm sure there are other people, if I looked it up on YouTube, have gotten through this 2 players in 10 minutes. But I find it near impossible to play this with someone else on that level and not take each other out once or twice.
But man, that first level, I mean, it's really good. I mean, if you're sitting there and you go in and you're expecting that TMNT arcade game, that's it. I mean, it's really good. And you talked about the boss where it like transitions over to where you're seeing the boss, you're looking out through the boss's eyes, and you have to like pick up the rocks or whatever and throw it at the boss. I mean, that was really cool. I mean, that was totally different. And that was throughout the game, no matter the challenge of it and how crazy it gets, there were always these little things that kind of impressed me that they would do like that. That was just different. You didn't see that in other games. But once you got to that second stage, even that, I was like, all right, they're changing gears. We're going up and down now, and this is still kind of in the same like brawler kind of gameplay. But after that, everything's off the table as far as what this game's trying to do.
Well, it takes kind of a throw everything in the kitchen sink, deal of game design, and they do all the pieces. I mean, they all are very competent and coherent pieces. It's not like all of a sudden you're a gun game and all of a sudden you're, some sort of sports game or a racing game or something. I mean, it always feels like it's still part of the same 2D side scroller or 2D brawler feel, but every level has a kind of different mechanic and different feel to it. So the first level, like I said, is kind of a straight brawler. The second one, you're going down this pit and these ropes. What makes it harder in two players is, it's a Nintendo game. You have two action buttons. And so when you're using your attack button, a lot of the time, whatever your attack is, you do a couple little hits, and then all of a sudden you'll do like a big slam hit. Either your fist gets really large or your foot, or in this case, in that level, you turn into like this swinging wrecking ball. And that's awesome, but it's so easy to hit your partner as a swinging wrecking ball. But so if you're playing first, we're going to just say, from this point on, we're not going to talk about multiplayer for the levels because I promise none of us played anything after level 3 with two players, if level 3. So level 2, if you get down to the bottom, after taking a bunch of birds and then these robot things, this is where the game starts telling you, like, oh, yeah, you're going to take a lot of damage. Now, this game gives you 6 life points to a life. And the only way to refill those life points is either by beating the stage, which is great, or you'll find flies very sparingly, and you have a very short window to catch them. But you're frogs, so eat flies, it gives you back a block of life. Great. That's outstanding. Or die. If you die early on, you'll start right where you were, and with all your full hearts and everything. You have, I think, 3 lives to start as well. This game... At first, they're like, okay, cool, I start wherever I die. That's a benefit. I like that. However, once you die and lose all your lives, then you have to continue. And I didn't realize, and I looked in the instructions and didn't see anything there about it, it has limited continues. You only have, I think, 3 continues. I didn't count them, but I realized I ran out of continues quickly. Let's say it's even 5. It's still not nearly enough to learn this game. So you'll lose your lives in like level 2, boom, continue, you start at the beginning of level 2. Again, level 1, level 2, you probably will get through those your first or second try. Level 3 is where the game, like Jeremy said earlier, really kind of says, well, fuck you, here's what we're going to do whatever we want. Level 3 starts with what feels like a regular brawler again. You're back on a kind of 2D brawler level for the first part of the level, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then you find some bikes, and that introduces you to the speeder bike section, which I promise you, if you're listening to this and you got past this section before, and you're not using a Game Genie, and you're not doing save states, which I certainly did, congratulations. You're way better than I am if you got to level 4 in this game on your own in the cart. I never did until now. I'm fairly certain if I ever did, I got immediately to it, died, and quit, and never went back, because level 3, when you hit the speeder bikes, the speeder bikes will... At first, it makes, it's like, okay, you're flying forward at an okay speed. You can see the blocks that are going to be showing up. It kind of flashes a block where it's going to be, and then you have to make sure you dodge it. Okay, no big deal, right? Sure, except that if you do hit one of those walls, you immediately die, and it goes back to the beginning of the biker section. Now, you get far enough in the bike section, and you get to like what looks like a finish line, and it keeps going. But thankfully, if you die then, you start back at that line. However, since you die in one hit, and it's a fairly large section between each checkpoint, you have to basically be perfect on every previous section to even have a chance to die once or twice to learn the next section. And because you have limited continues, it means you're playing through level 1, level 2. You get a couple shots at level 3, you die, start again. Couple shots, you die, great. Couple shots, you die, bam, start back at the first level again. You have to go through that whole first level, which you should by now have no problem with. The whole second level, which isn't that hard, but there are some definite parts where if you do get hit by something, it might start a cycle of you just getting hit over and over again until you die. And then you get through level 3, get through the brawler part, try the bike part again. There are, I think, 4 or 5 sections in the speeder bike section, and the last one of them, they don't warn you where the walls are. You just have to know. And that is infuriating.
It's incredibly frustrating. Like you were saying, a game with limited continues and limited shots at it without having to, and then you have to start over at the beginning again. And yeah, I mean, I have long just had a disdain for that kind of thing where there's no way you could get through this skill wise, like the first time you played, or even the second, or or even subsequent times. Mega Man, the Mega Man games, I think there's a lot of memorization to that. But those games, you can hunker down and you can still get through levels on your first time through. If you're good enough at it. I don't know anyone good enough to get through this. I could not, and the entirety of my childhood, up through my teens, I could not conquer this stage. This was the talk around school amongst everyone that played this game. Nobody could get past it. You had the kids that claimed, but when called to action, could not come through. But yeah, this was amazing. This may be the only stage of an NES game I can think of that I had difficulty on, worked on extensively, but still never made it through. That's quite a distinction also when you think about some of the titles on that system and the difficulty that came with them. And man, for this one to just halt you right in your tracks, it's saying something. And I can't say it's cheap. I don't know. I can't say it's fair either. It's just difficult. It's that kind of old school difficulty that people like to reminisce about, but is not a tremendous joy to go back and play really. But I got through it this time, and I thought I was going to have to just have one. I thought I was just going to save state that thing to death. But really, all it took was just one good old fashioned save state at the beginning of the track. And I eventually made my way through it. And I'll say this, for all the frustration, and to finally finish that thing was a tremendous sense of accomplishment. I mean, I told you earlier, I'm also playing Dark Souls, and it's like taking down any one of the more difficult bosses on there. You feel worthless, you feel like an idiot, and then all of a sudden you're on top of the world. And that's a pretty good feeling. And that really kind of got me hooked on this game and intent to continue on. There's a lot of game left. For all I knew when I was playing this as a kid, once I got through this, there's maybe one or two more stages. Boy, was I wrong about that.
Like, Battletoads is everyone's favorite game that no one ever made it past the third stage.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, that's got to be saying something good for it.
I would put money down that just over 90% of the people that ever played Battletoads never made it past this stage. Like, this is a stage everyone remembers, and for good reason. No one ever beat it because, I mean, if you did beat it, good on you. I mean, that is impressive to me. Even as a kid, I never did it. It was just one of those things, like, you go through those first couple of stages and you get to that one, and it's really more or less just, let's see how far I can get in it this time. Because you don't expect to beat it. I never did. It was impossible. And I was fine with that for some reason. I was like, well, that's fine. I got 2 stages out of this game, and this is like the final stage for me, and I don't expect to beat it, but let's just see how far I can get. But later on, when I first got my computer and emulation was a big thing, and I discovered save states. The very first game that I thought of to try with save states was Battletoads. And I'm not afraid to admit that the only time I ever made it past this stage, or the first time I ever made it past this stage, was using a save state on the what is old NES,
like Nesticle or something.
Yeah, something like that. I can't quite remember. But yeah, using the save state on that was the first time I ever made it past that, and I didn't feel bad. I never even made it to the final section of that stage when I was a kid. And when I was doing it on the emulator, I was just like, this is bullshit. Like, who can do this? What did Rare expect? This is the third stage. There's like, 7 more after this?
13 total.
It's just ridiculous that you would put this stage here. I mean, this isn't just a little bit of a difficulty spike. This is the end of the game. For what most games would try to ever want to be as far as difficulty is concerned. So it just blew my mind that there was, like Billy, I was like, damn, there's a lot of game left here. It's not just, a couple of stages left. There's a whole other game out here that no one ever got to see because no one ever got past this stage.
Yeah, no, there's a ton more game. I mean, and every level is a little bit different. Like, there aren't, It's not like there's 6 more brawler levels and 3 more down, ride down a tunnel level or anything. No, every level after this is a little bit different. I mean, they all feel like the same game, but it's a grab bag of incredibly difficult. One mistake kills you. Good luck. I mean, it's not even platforming. I don't even know what to call it. It is just a ridiculous 8-bit difficulty taken to the extreme. I mean, all the things that tie together. The fact that you have only 6 hit points, but a lot of things do 2 or 3 points of damage, if not instantly kill you. Okay. You do get to come back in most levels right where you die, but, like there's a lot of sections, much like the bikes we just talked about, where there is kind of checkpoints. You go back to the checkpoint, and later on that seems to happen more and more. And then you have limited continues in a low number as well. And there doesn't seem to be any way to earn more continues. It's not like, oh, yeah, you have to have 100,000 points and you can continue. A lot of games did little things like that. Nope, not this game. It's just like, no, you get 3. And hopefully that's good enough for you. So you have 9 lives, worst case. And hopefully you can make it through those 3 levels. So I promise you, I never beat the 3rd level of this game without save states, including this time. I did get through it finally today, just to see how far I'd get. I got to level 4 on my set of continues, so hooray for me. But it took, 30 years? So I'm not too proud of that. But so the other thing I want to mention on level 3 that I thought was super cool, about right before you get to the bikes, you do a couple fights against these rat guys, and then all of a sudden 3 little space invaders fly across the screen, and they'll grab your health blocks, a health block in each of them, and they never grab your last one, so you can't die from this, but you can go down to 1 hit point if you're that low. And they fly across the screen, grab your hit point, and kind of try to fly away. You can punch them and then grab it back. I thought those were super cool. I still think that's super cool. And they do show up a few more times in the game, but not until way later. So I only saw them one time up to today, or up to this recording this podcast. But that's a really cool, like, kind of throwaway little section that I thought was a really neat little touch.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I mentioned, that the game's just kind of filled with random things like that you kind of almost breaks the fourth wall or whatever. You just don't expect to see it, especially on an NES game. It's like these things are literally coming down and going off the screen and taking my health squares away. So it was just a really fun, neat thing to see, especially back then.
So level 3 is kind of the wall that most people never saw past. So I normally don't like to go level to level. We did that early on in this podcast, and for some games it doesn't make sense. This might be the first game we've covered in a long time that it really does kind of make sense to discuss each level. Because, again, they are very different. But also, from here on out, I'm sure most of you have never seen these unless you looked it up on YouTube. Level 4, because, thankfully you got through this really tough speeder bike section. So everyone deserves a break. So let's make the next level an ice level. You slide all over the place. There's things that fall from the ceiling that kill you in one hit. There's spiky things that fly around the room that hit you and kill you in one hit. There's a whole section at the end where you've got to jump from platform to platform and time it perfectly right, or you instantly die and have to start back at a checkpoint. I guarantee you, if I ever, and I don't think so, but I can't promise that at some point I didn't, in a marathon session when I was younger, get through level 3 one time, and then died 3 seconds in level 4, and I probably just angrily turned the game off, maybe through the Nintendo. Who knows? I would have been furious. Everything in this level kills you in one hit, pretty much. There's spikes everywhere. There's again, platforms that go back and forth. There's parts where you're jumping down from platform to platform while ice cubes fall behind you, and you have to either go as fast as you can or kind of find a good safe space to jump over them, or they do a third of your life if they hit you. I mean, this level on its own would have been tough, but after the bike level, it's just like another punch right in the gut.
Yeah, I mean, there's no break. It's fuck. I would say this one is not quite as frustrating for me. I mean, I was able to make this one. It didn't take me 30 years to get through this one, at least. But yeah, they pull out all the stops. Not only at the ice level, you know what you're getting with an ice level on an old video game. You're fucking sliding all over the damn place. And I just think there are hits on here that even after I played through the level a few times, I know they're coming. I just can't avoid. There are some ice blocks, snowballs that I just cannot, for the life of me, avoid. And the level starts off. I like the way it starts off, where and I thought it was interesting that you kind of get into these small snowball fights, these snowman characters on there. But yeah, it just there's this level. Oh, and I'm already worn down from the previous one. And I think though what I had going for me though, I was just excited to be playing another level of this game. Despite the fact I've owned it for so many years, this at this point was a brand new game to me. Once I got to level 4, but yeah, there are just a lot of cheap shots on here, and this is another thing where, like the bike level, really don't think I'm ever going to master this thing where I can run through it every time. But I found it a little more bearable. I made it through after a handful of attempts.
Yeah, and it at least, they continue to add a few things into the stage that isn't standard. As Billy said, you're having snowball fights with these snowmen because they've got little piles of snowballs that you can kind of throw back and forth. And those ice blocks, you actually have to use those or the snowballs to open up ice gates or ice walls throughout the level so you can continue. And sometimes you have to actually get in position to figure out how to break that wall. It can either be you have to wait for a snowman behind you to throw some snowballs at you and dodge those so that those can break the wall, or you just have to figure out how to get the ice block where you need it to be so that you can actually break the wall. But yes, besides that, it is a snow level, and somehow they managed to put spikes in it and a lot of platforming where you're probably going to fall and hit that spike and die instantly. This is one of those games where I'm just like, why did it give me a power bar? Mm-hmm. Like, there are so many things in this game that just kills you in one hit that when something doesn't, I'm almost surprised. I'm just like, what? I didn't die. It's like, oh God, it actually took a chunk of my power bar and I didn't die. But so much of the rest of this game is just dying in one hit. And that's just all I expected in just about every single stage of this game.
Well, this is the first level that has like real hard platforming. Up until now, the first two levels, or first level that had platforming really wasn't that bad. And the third level, I mean, the bikes were tough, but it's not platforming. This is tough platforming and an ice level. So, again, it's another shift of the game mechanics of what you'd expect. And, again, with 2 players, I can't even imagine doing this level because there's a lot of it that's timing-based. Like, you just got to go start to finish through a section, and if you can't stop or you'll get hit by an ice block or something else, 2 people doing it at once would be unimaginable. Just impossible. That level, though, again, I did enjoy it. Again, without save states, I don't know how far I would have gotten in this level, because if you lose your 3 lives, have to continue once or twice, great, I have to do that bike level again, which means I would have probably just said, you know what, guys, nothing happens after level 4. This game only has 4 levels. What a great game. Let's talk about something else. So I did save at the beginning of each level after this and try my hardest to not save cheese my way through them. But I'm going to be honest, I did a whole lot of that, especially later on. So after level 4, then you get to a surfing level. So immediately you get on the surfboards and start going through the level. It's easier than the bikes. I think it's much easier than the bikes. However, there's a section where it looks like fireballs kind of go around the screen, and then missiles go up and down from the bottom and the top of the screen. You're supposed to dodge them. I don't know if there's a pattern or if it's just reflex. I actually thought that was easier. Maybe it's because it was just reflex and it wasn't memorizing patterns. It looked like it was way crazier than the speeder bikes, but I had little problem with the surf section.
Is that one later in the game? The missiles?
No, so the surf section, actually, the surfing level has 2 surfing sections. It starts with a surfing section, then it has a middle brawler section where you have to fight your your second boss, because the first boss would have been that robot at the end of the first level, who's like a big rat that takes a lot of hits, and he wasn't too hard, but at the same time, if he hit you, he did a lot of damage, and he could instant kill you by landing on you. A lot of the bosses seem to do that, but as long as you can kind of juggle him, not let him get to the ground, just keep hitting him in the air, you could take him out pretty easily. And then there's another surfboard section at the end. No, you're right. There's the jet Scooter section. I've combined the two in my brain.
Yes.
Okay, so I take that back. There is no section with instead this has that's why this had logs and whirlpools. The logs would at first seem like they were just north and south gates you had to drive around, but then they started going back and forth. You had to time it right, and then they had whirlpools that you had to kind of follow the spin of the whirlpool or get hit, and those did kill you in one shot. You're right. So I did combine the surfboard level and the later jet, whatever they are, like jet scooters level that I thought was going to be a shooter, but in no way was. Yeah, okay, I'm wrong on that, but I'm not going to edit it because that's going to take too much time for me to figure out how to edit that effectively. So we will, unless you guys have something else to say about the surf section, I think the next level was the next time I thought that if I didn't have save states, if I would have gotten here the first time, I would have laughed for hours about how impossible this game is and moved on.
This is a pet peeve. Yeah. Even Mario is guilty of this one. Where you advance through the stage by jumping on something, riding along on it, intermittently having to jump off of it, jump back on, and kind of memorize its pattern, look out for what's coming up on the stage. And these, I just don't have a mind for this kind of stage. I have the hardest time just kind of keeping track, keeping account of everything that's going on. And trying to navigate on this. It's a giant snake this time around. And, I feel like maybe the surf stage was the break because it's right back to it, right back to the grindstone on this one. And this one really gave me a hard time.
Yeah, I was going to say the surf stage, at least the game finally kind of gave you a break.
Yeah.
Like it's not that hard. I mean, it's definitely, you got to look out what you pay attention. But after the previous stages, that seemed like a game. That was actually the one I got through the easiest this time around. But I knew what was coming, and this snake stage is one of the worst. It is. I don't know if I would say. I'd actually probably say this is harder than the speeder bike stage, because it is just. It's almost impossible to do it and without save states or anything like that, unless it is just you have memorized literally everything that is coming. And this isn't just like, you talk about Mario. At least Mario, it was just a section of a stage.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or it telegraphed. Mario always did a good job of telegraphing where these things were going to go. You could see kind of where it was obvious that that thing was going to go. But this, it just goes everywhere. And sometimes this is the worst kind of difficulty. It makes you guess where it went. And
it's not one of those games where you can blame anything, but just the sheer, because the controls on this game they're solid. They demand some jumping, some platforming from you, and the jump's good enough. It's not one of those awful floaty jumps like you encounter. Everything's responsive. It's hard. And yeah, like you said, there is guesswork involved. And I can't stand that. And yeah, I don't know. I'd put this right up there with that speeder bike stage. I don't really know if this is more difficult. I imagine if the roles were reversed and this was the third stage years ago, I probably wouldn't have got through it. Just out of sheer frustration and dislike for this type of stage. And yeah, in Mario, it's brief. It might be to get partway through a castle and then you're back on your feet. And that's another thing about this. I don't know if it just feels that way because they're so difficult and you play through them so many times. But the stages on here, I think a couple of them kind of wore their welcome out with me. They definitely felt like they dragged on. Which normally wouldn't be a complaint in a game that I enjoy playing. But the difficulty combined with the length of the stages, I think, is probably one of my main kind of sticking points with this one.
It's just the amount of memorization that you have to do. I mean, it's not like you finish the section and now there's a hard section and then you get to do an easier section. It is just nonstop, especially with the snake level. Yeah. It is just memorizing every single thing over and over and over, and you have to memorize it or you're just not going to get by it, and that just makes the game these stages seem that much longer.
I don't think we've accurately described how hard this level is. The snakes level is by far the hardest thing in this game that I got to. I mean, I didn't beat the game, but what I stopped at was where I just stopped enjoying myself, and I was done cheesing this game. I was done save cheesing to get through things, and I just was like, this is... I've seen what the rest of the game has because I watched it. I think I've seen what I need to see. This was a level that, I mean, if we wouldn't have gotten this far and played this, I would have been disappointed. But this level is offensive. It is, you ride on these snakes, like we've said, over spikes, around spikes. A lot of, I mean, literally, if you fall off the snake, you're dead. You might as well just turn the game off. You've dead, start again, and you start at the beginning of that room. And there's 4 rooms of snakes, and it's not a room that you can see all of. Oh no, that would make it somewhat easy. It's a room that you see just a piece of, and you have to ride these snakes around the room. It has blind jumping, which is something I hate in most games, but especially a game where you're blind jumping onto other things that move, onto other parts of the same snake in some sections. Or you have to jump and know to dodge left and right around these 2 spikes, and then the snake goes the other way real quick and you drive into the spike. Or, you know, the next snake that comes out is 5 times faster than the snake you're just on, and there's no way to know that until you've had that snake hit and immediately just slam you into the spikes and you're dead. It has... I mean, with save states, where I saved each room, I still had to go online and watch some of the snakes, like watch some of this on YouTube just to figure out what I'm supposed to do, because I could not figure out. Like, oh, I have to ride this snake and then just kind of stay at the very end of the snake, the very tail, and then halfway climb up a snake and then jump blindly and dive right to land back on the snake and at the very bottom of the screen. It's like, how would anyone ever figure this out ever without someone showing you what to do? I mean, and again, if you're playing this on the cart and you had this on Nintendo and you somehow made it to this level, you have to have, like, your 5 live max and all your continues to even pretend to have a chance to learn 1 or 2 of these rooms, to then go back to the beginning of the game, play all the way up here again, hopefully keep all your items and stuff, and then start again and learn it. So, I mean, if you're good at this game, you can beat it in 45 minutes to an hour. If you were good at the first 5 levels of this game, it means you're spending 25 minutes to get to the snake room. So you get your 3 shots, which is 3 instant kills. It's not like you can get hit by anything else in this level but instant kills. And then, good luck. Start again at the very beginning of the game to get all the way back here to learn these snakes. This level itself, I think if I did not have a way to make save states, if I would have somehow had the cart and spent, I mean, days and days and days playing this for this podcast and gotten this level, I would have probably just said this is where the game is. It has to end here. There's nothing past this. I can't believe it. It was nearly impossible. And I did the most cheesing on this level to get through it. I mean, just some real sleazy, like, 1 jump, save state. Next jump, save state. Next jump, save state. And I made it out. And the most infuriating part of the whole level, to exit the room you're in, you have to jump off a snake onto a portal that says out or in or something. If you miss that jump, you've made it through all the rest of the level. You've gotten to that last little section. You missed the jump. There's nothing for you to fall onto, so you just fall onto spikes and die and get to start back at the beginning of that room. That happened to me several times on the next to last board, I guess the 3 out of 4, and I died twice that way. And again, that was after knowing what to do and what was coming, and I still just, like, you know, twitched the wrong way and missed the hole. I mean, that would have been... I may have quit gaming. We may not be having this podcast. I may have said after that day, like, I'm no longer playing video games. I'm going to get really good at soccer or something else, because this is the most frustrating game that we have covered on this podcast, and probably that I've played since I played this the first time.
It's just that asshole difficulty. It is literally like someone wanted to be as much of an asshole as possible to make this as hard as possible. Because, I mean, that's literally all it is. I mean, as you mentioned, that there's a lot of blind jumps where if you have to guess in a game where you're going to jump and you're going to die if you miss that jump, that's bad. That's bad game design.
It's horrible game design. And it's, again, with unlimited continues. I think if that was the only difference to this game is they give you unlimited continues, I would be less angry with that sort of level. Because this level, if I could continue 18 times on this level, I could probably eventually figure this out, right? But you don't. You get to continue, if you're lucky, 3 times on this level. And that's if you've done your best to get here. And then every time you continue, you get 3 lives. That's 3 tries, because it's instant kills, and there's no 1-ups on this level. So you have to learn this after plowing your way through the rest of this game. And this is, at least as far as I got, hands down the hardest level. I can't imagine there's another level that, especially after watching it, that's this bad. But I probably am wrong because I watched someone play it who knew what they were doing, and they made even this level look like it was no big deal. But it certainly was.
And your reward for finishing this level, yeah, that one was bad, but this next one it's another speeder level, and it is a real son of a bitch as well.
See, I liked this one. I did not have as much of a problem with this level. I mean, it was still not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not up here saying, I got through it in one shot. No. Oh, no. I definitely would have died a bunch and had to learn it. But at least, much like the surfboard level, it's a little harder than that. But I thought this level, after you get through, it has kind of another, 3 or 4 segments. The first segment is flying through gates. Mm-hmm. It's like fire gates. You just have to make sure you fly through them. And it was no big deal. And then the second section was all reflex. It was all these fireballs fly across the screen and then missiles fly from the bottom and the top. But it was not like it was a set pattern. You couldn't memorize it. You just had to dodge it. I actually did okay at that, which made me feel good. I play a lot of 2D shooters. That was right up my alley. That I felt good about. Now, it's not a shooter because you can't do anything but dodge. But at least I felt good about that. And then the very last section was another series of gates that increased in speed and distance, and they actually would open and close on you, so you had to fly in and like towards the front of the screen or the back of the screen and know what to do. That was hard. I'm not going to pretend that wasn't frustrating, and it definitely killed me several times. But compared to the Snake level, I thought that level was nowhere near as bad.
I didn't actually mind it, but it's just more memorization. Like it is just memorizing everything that's coming at you, and otherwise you're dead.
Yeah, and if you're sitting down and playing this game as intended in one sitting, there serious fatigue has set in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much. It's just constant. You don't get that break. I mean, especially after the Snakes level, which I can't imagine anyone ever being able to make it through without just clawing their face off in frustration. And then, maybe give you another, like something that isn't, give you a brawling stage again, to where you can just punch some things in the face and feel good. But then you get this, and it's just another speeder bike level. And I remember back when I was playing this on an emulator, when I was finally able to make it through this on the first time, the entire game, I was like, is this all this is going to be? Is it just speeder bike levels all the way to the end? Is the last boss going to be a speeder bike level? It just seemed like they were just going to keep pulling that out, and that was what the game was going to be. But no, they've got some more stuff to throw at you.
Well, and to be fair, it's not all speeder bikes. That would still at least be like, okay, you learned it the first time, so now you've kind of got a heads up on what to do. No, it's just a different vehicle. So you have the speeder bikes at first. They fly along the ground. You have a jump button, and you got to make sure you dodge platforms. The surfboard level that came in, you basically have to jump a little bit, but really you're just kind of moving and dodging things. You don't have nearly the control you had because you're on water, I suppose, as you did with the speeder bike. And then this is more of a flying ship, like a regular 2D shooter where you're dodging shots from every angle and then trying to fly through these gates. Like they're all, it's slightly different. I mean, it feels like the same game, but it's not like it's a speeder bike level and then you do a level and then another speeder bike. And then, that's essentially what they did, but they made all of them different enough you had to kind of relearn it each time. Even if you mastered stage 3, then you had to kind of relearn for stage 5. And 7 was exactly the same.
Give them this, every single stage is different. I mean, we've talked about several games where they've every stage, if they tried to do something different, it maybe didn't feel like the same game. Or we kind of covered Dynamite Heady. It did a whole lot of different things. Earthworm Jim 2, it did a whole lot of different things. Battletoads does a whole lot of different things. But it all feels, like you said, like a cohesive game. It's just that they kind of change things up here. And in just about every single stage, it's the same blueprint. of how the character controls and what you're able to do with that character. But they find neat little ways to change it up here and there. And that's kind of what they did with the speeder bike levels, with the speeder bikes, the surfboards, and now this when you're in a plane. It's all essentially the same thing, but it kind of changes it up just enough to where it does feel different.
I think Earthworm Jim's a good comparison for how this game is organized. I mean, it doesn't play the same, but where you feel like there's, they threw in all these different ideas, but I think Earthworm Jim misfires a lot. Like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It's way easier. But some of those levels were more of just like, okay, I see why you did this. You thought it was funny. It's not, and I have to drudge through it. But every level it's well designed. It controls well, but they're just hard as nails. Like, nothing lets up. There's no easy section. There's nothing after the second level that you can be like, yeah, I enjoyed this and I just took through it in 1 2 shots. No, there's no chance. You have to. There's nothing but memorization in some of these levels. The next level is as far as I got. I think I got the least far of all of us in this game. The next level after the non-shooter flying level is a tower. You start at the bottom of the tower. You've got to climb up to the top of the tower to fight some sort of giant robot boss with a gun. I got to him, and he just kept killing me. And I got to the point with that level specifically. That's another one where there's checkpoints in the level, and it starts you back farther than I'd like. Everything does at least half damage to you, and most of the time I think there's one section you can get some flies to heal yourself. So I had to basically just like save cheese my way up this tower. I got to a platform where there wasn't something actively attacking me. I quickly did a save state and I kept going. And even with that, I mean, there's gas that makes you choke and kills you in one hit that you don't even see coming. There are jumps you have to make on these moving, like almost moving floors where gaps, you can jump through the gaps, but then sometimes they shock you. And then you get to the next level and there's robots that are shooting constantly. You have to duck under their shots while you're dodging the floor. I mean, it is nonstop. There's nothing in this level that's relaxing, and it just got to the point where I realized if I was going to progress in this game any farther, it would involve me literally saving, walking a step, and that's not fun. I mean, sure I could do it to say I did it, but that's not a game. I don't know what it is. I'm impressed that you guys got farther than me in this. I did see the rest of the levels. I think that they all have something interesting to talk about, but I was done. This was as far as I got, and it's 5 levels farther than I ever got till today. So, Billy, how much farther than this level did you get?
I made it. I believe there were 2 other stages after this one. I remember the stage after this. I just seemed like a bland stage afterwards. But then you end up, in this fucking tube stage. Where you are traversing the series of tubes. There's some underwater portions. There's a little bit of swimming to it. And and it was kind of maze-like also. And it's like a greatest hits of all the other shit on there. You got your hits I don't think you can avoid. You got your things that take more than half of your health with each hit. You got your damn, your blind jumps. I just thought this stage was pretty much where I was going to quit. If I didn't finish this stage on the particular day I was playing, I said, all right, this is good enough. I think I've seen it all. I know at this point how many stages there are. I am well into this game. I'm going to give it another shot. I happened to get through it that time, and you're treated to another racing stage after that. I believe this one has like 3 parts to it. You are trying to beat someone in a race to kick a bomb out of the way so it doesn't self-destruct. And it's done in 3 parts. I got through the first one suspiciously easy. And the second time around, I couldn't. And at that point, it's kind of like what you said, the fun factor was gone. It had vanished. Probably around that tube stage, and I was just running on fumes at that point in time. But I was hitting the save state button more than I was hitting any other button, and that's when I needed to just call it a day. I got through 9 levels and was partway through the 10th, and on a game like this, where years ago I couldn't get past the 3rd, I considered that just that's victory enough for me. I am happy with that.
the level you stopped on, which is that race level, is
Mm-hmm.
it's not that it's just a race. It's a falling level. Like you essentially are
Yeah.
starting at the top of the level and you have to fall your way
Yeah.
down, and all you're doing is like making sure you land on these platforms and jump through levels, and you have to kind of memorize where the holes are while you're racing this other rat down.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get to the bottom of that section, to the bottom before you do, you die and you have to start back at the top again. And you have to do that several times in that level. I think it's 3 times total. And some of those look, I mean, I was watching, again, a video of someone who knew the levels, and it still looked like, how would you ever memorize this? Because you have to not make a mistake or the rat doesn't slow down. The rat never stops. It just constantly is going the right way. So you get through all 3 of those. You get to the bottom. After the 3rd one, there's another boss. And it's another boss that kind of lands on you and kills you in one hit or jumps all over the room. All the bosses on this game are very, very similar in that you can win if you can juggle them. If you can manage to time your attacks to hit them before they hit the ground, you can bounce them around the room and you can probably take them down. But as soon as they land on the ground, you've got to be ready. And like the boss I stopped at the top of the tower, and I don't know their names. They're in the book, like everyone's names in the book, but I can't tell who's who because it's a Nintendo game, and they're not very well. All the bosses kind of look just like, oh, here's a gray giant guy, and here's a brown giant guy, and I think they're all mice. Maybe they're pigs. I can't tell. But the one I got stuck at top of the tower, like he would at first totally obvious, simple pattern. He shoots, then he jumps in the air, and then he shoots, and then he jumps in the air. But you have time in between when he shoots and when he jumps, so you can hit him again. But after you hit him enough times, he's jumping around the room. Sometimes he fires twice in a row. Other times he fires the moment he lands on the ground. Sometimes you'll hit him and he'll like slam down on the ground as soon as you hit him. I mean, the bosses in this game are incredibly tough, and this one looked absolutely no easier. After this level, there was a level that looked like, because again, I'm watching a video of someone that knew what they were doing, a very straightforward and easy unicycle level, but I guarantee you it was not. Jeremy, did you get to that level?
Yeah, that it's not easy. Of course, it's not. But yes, you're basically you're holding on to handlebars, and you're on this track. You're going up, down, and around this track. And the thing that is chasing you is this weird pinwheel. I mean, not a pinwheel. It's a circle with a spiral inside of it. That's the horrible enemy that is chasing you. And the circle goes faster than you do. You cannot control your speed in this game, except when you go around the corners. And as you go around the corners, you have to press the directional pad in the direction that you need to go. And if you do that just right, and I'm not talking like you've got a delay of like a second or two to do this, but you have to be perfect to go around this corner when you press the button, and you'll gain just a bit of space on that circle. But if you miss it, you slow down. And so if you miss like a couple of corners in a row, this thing's going to catch up to you and it's going to kill you in one hit, and then you're back to the beginning. So it's just more memorization. At least you get you kind of have a little bit of control in it as far as like being able to press the button and get a little bit of space or advantage on the circle chasing you. But it's still very much just like, okay, I have to memorize every single corner that I'm going to go around and do this almost perfect, or I'm going to die. And that's what the whole stage is until you get to the end of the stage, and you have to, the circle is a boss and you have to beat the circle. Yeah,
again, watching someone that knew what they were doing, was like, this looks like he's just on a track and he's riding him. Like, that means there's something I'm missing, and this looks miserable. But I'm glad to hear it was just as awful looking as it was on there. And then I think that's the last level. The last level is the final level. You walk around the outside of a tower while you go from the bottom to the top. It's one of those it's a fake rotation until you get to the top to fight the last boss. I'm pretty sure that's the end of the game. Jeremy, did you get to that level?
I have in the past. I didn't this time because I didn't feel like save stating constantly. But yes, back when I was doing that, when I had my first computer, I was playing this through on an emulator the first time. That was my goal, was to make it through this game. And yes, I did get to that stage. It's basically you're just climbing the tower. It's a really neat looking level, though. I mean, they definitely have a lot of tricks that they kind of use, like visual tricks in this game. And as you're basically on this circular tower, and as you move left or right, the tower moves with you. It's kind of circling around, and you're basically having to move it to find the platforms to proceed up the tower. and every now and again there's like an enemy that you have to fight before you can proceed up the tower further. But it's actually kind of fun. Like, I mean, it's not maddening like the previous levels were. There's definitely times where you can just, you'll die and you don't even know what's going on. But it's more of what I kind of wish the rest of the game was, I guess. I don't know, but it's kind of that, just it's a really inventive level that you're progressing up. You feel like you have control over yourself and what you're doing. You're not dying constantly. It's a neat level. And so yes, that is kind of the last level besides the final boss.
Did you beat that years ago when you did this to try to beat it? Did you actually beat it, or did you get to this level and somehow get stuck?
No, I actually beat it. I beat it.
Well, you're already better than I've ever been at video games, because this is, even with the ability to save and walk a foot and save and walk a foot, I still couldn't beat this game. It is the hardest game that I've ever played that is that has an ending. I mean, obviously, there's plenty of games that are harder because they never end. Donkey Kong, but this is impossible.
I would agree. I don't know. I'm sure there are definitely people out there that have beat this, but it's beyond anything that I can imagine. I always thought of myself as a very patient gamer as far as like being able to deal with like the hardest games like Contra, Ghouls and Ghosts, Castlevania, things like that. I don't know. It seemed it was tough, but it was fair. And in most of Battletoads, it doesn't seem like it's fair. It seems like you're playing guess what the developer wants you to do half the time, and just memorize everything, because that's all it is. It's just almost like a memorization game half the time, or more than half the time. And I as much as I love Battletoads, and I always will, I don't think it's a good game.
I have to kind of disagree in that I do like Battletoads. I did find it to be a lot of memorization, but I feel the control is good, and a lot of the time, I felt like I just wasn't good enough, and I felt like if I memorized a little more, I could get through it. I know that that's crazy, because I literally was able to freeze anytime I wanted and still couldn't do it, but I never felt like, it doesn't feel like a bad game, because a bad game, either I feel like the control's so bad I can't do what I'm supposed to do, or the levels are designed in such a way that it's not going to happen for me, or you have to do some craziness to get through it. This felt like everything was pretty straightforward as what you were supposed to do. There was definitely a lot of memorization. There's some blind jumps. There's some things, but I at no point did I feel like this is a poorly put together game. It's just as hard as I could imagine a game being, while still not feeling unplayable. It is right on that line where it's too hard to exist, and it in some places it probably is, but it never feels like it's too hard.
Like, I didn't mean to say that this was like a bad game. Like, we have played bad games on this podcast.
Oh, of course, yes.
I think I'm with you. I think it totally controls great. I think the blueprint of this game is awesome. It looks amazing for an NES game. It sounds great. It's got amazing music, and the whole game, just awesome music. But I think just the design of most of these levels, I think that's where I'm just like, I don't think I can get behind it to the point where I'm just like, this is a quality game. Because there's so much here that is so good, but the way they designed it in so many of these levels, the snake level, just that alone is almost insulting at times with what they wanted you to do with this game.
But and honestly, I think that almost everything with this game could be forgiven if there were unlimited continues to it. If once you got on a stage, you had as many chances as you wanted to get through it. I think I could overlook a hell of a lot then, because there's a big difference between when I tried to just play through this normally and when I played through using save states, and I could start over at the beginning of the stage and play it as much as I wanted and kind of get it down and memorize everything. But yeah, this game, when you get to that point, you're playing through, you're not saving or anything like that, and you're on like stage 5 or 6, you've used, you're on your last continue, you only have a few lives, and it's not going to make you want to keep going. because you know you're just going to make it a little further and then have to start over again. And that's devastating in a game this difficult, to know that those stages that you scrape through and you know you haven't perfected, you're going to have to try them again. You're going to go through all of it again. But it's not a bad game. And as much as I've tried not to complain about too much other than some of the cheap spots and the difficulty. Anytime there's memorization involved, it is usually okay. But when you factor in like the blind jumps and all that, and the things that, whether it's my skill level or not, I don't know, the hits that you seemingly cannot avoid, it gets frustrating. And it's not always the good kind of frustrating, because there's sometimes there's payoff. If, like I said, it felt good finishing that speeder bike stage for the first time. But that was about it. Every other stage there's no time to celebrate, because you are heading into another fucking kick in the gut in the next stage. It doesn't do a good job of boosting the difficulty up and then kind of rewarding you for it. And I don't know, maybe I need to think back. The games back then that didn't often reward you for anything at all. But that being said, it's a good game. I enjoy it. I get frustrated with it. I can't say I'm going to be playing it again anytime soon. But I did enjoy it. I liked my time with it. I just wish I was a little bit better at it. This is definitely one of those where if you can sit down and play through it, you're going to impress the hell out of a lot of people. That's never going to be me.
Like I said before, this is just one of those games that everyone seems to love, kind of like Ghosts and Goblins, where everyone loves it, but I don't think anyone's made it past 2 or 3 stages of the whole game. Yeah. So it's just hard to hate. There's just a certain character and charisma to it. I don't know, but goddamn if I don't love me some Battletoads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game and Ghosts and Goblins, that's a great comparison. Years ago, we used to do a couple times, I guess, we did man challenges where we played like Super Meat Boy and all these other games to see how far we could get. This game specifically, would be a wonderful if there was a way to verify no one cheesed it. I liked when I started playing this for this podcast, I would start it up in the first level and I wouldn't use any save states to just see how far I could get. And the answer was the 3rd level over and over again. But still, it was like I didn't even mind that. Like, I enjoyed it. But that's because I only had to go through 2 levels that I really knew to learn the 3rd. Once I got past that and I was like, oh, this is going to be painful over and over again to go through all these levels to get 5 feet farther and then die and start over again. I mean, it is hard. But man, if you just play it and be okay with the fact that you're not going to beat it, just see how far you can get, it makes this game much better.